All right, welcome to the stream, welcome to the stream, welcome to the stream. It's Saturday. It's early. It's early. It's Saturday. I got up early, and I spent my morning listening to a lot of music and doing laundry. Isn't that exciting? Doesn't that just excite every bone within you? But that's done. And I finally settled on what we're doing today. Today, we are going to read Higurashi. We're not going to completely skip on it. We may only read one section. One strip. So it might, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half or so of reading. And then we're going to play Death Stranding 2. The intention is to hit Death Stranding 2 both Saturday and Sunday in a major way. My name is Austin, and I'm here to say we're going to hit Death Stranding 2 in a major way. I fucked it up. But I didn't want to not read any Higurashi, so this is where we're at. Well, bam! Do I need to preamble anything? Do I need to set anything? Do I need to say anything? Do I need to set up Higurashi? I don't think I do. It's just going. Yeah, I think we could just go. I think we're probably setting up to, I assume the investigation team, and in at the biggest of ways, maybe Tomoe Manai, is going to be crossing paths or intersecting at some point. I don't know if it'll be today, but I think we're building towards Tomoe meeting up with the original Higurashi cast, or more specifically, or maybe not even meet up, right? But at least, like, story-wise, cross paths and look into the history of, I was gonna say Rina Ryugu, Ragu sauce, because that was kind of set up in the last bit that we read to try to continue the investigation. They're like, okay, maybe we need to look into the past of Rina. Basically, the things she did at her old school. I think that's kind of what we're setting up here for. So let's get right in. Do it. Oh, this looks familiar. Dude, I called it. I'm so right. So, this is Hinamizawa Village. The surrounding area was full of natural atmosphere. The golden ears of rice fluttered in the wind along the sprawling sea of pastoral land. The lusciously verdant, freshly grown crops in the field were some sort of fruit. Vegetables? The wind blowing through the open windows carried in a distinct aroma, different from the summer grass. A fresh, calming air that you could just melt into. Then, just beyond the fields and old-fashioned houses, there were several newly built houses lined up at irregular intervals. What a peaceful village. Feels so soothing. Yeah, I can't say I ever disliked it here. As long there isn't an incident. I think there's missing a word. As long as there isn't an incident. She lightly tilted her head to steal a quick glance at Oishi, who was driving. He seemed to have something on his mind as he stared straight at the road ahead. Whoa! The frame of the car shook as it hit a bump in the gravel road. The suspension seemed pretty worn out. The impact propagated straight to her seat, causing her to jump up. Got a lot of experience with this. You seem like you're handling it just fine, eh, Oishi-san? Yeah, I've had this car for years. Its best feature is its air conditioning. If you're feeling car sick, don't hesitate to speak up. I'm alright. I'm sure my inner ears will get me through this. She gave a confident answer, but the car was shaking so much that she couldn't feel comfortable without a hand on the handle above the window. Tomoe focused her eyes on a distant point in an effort to stave off motion sickness and lamented not driving here in her own car.
さて、ともえちゃんはこの後どうします？
So, Tomoe-chan, do you have any plans after this?
そうですね。
Let me think.
ホテルのチェックインにはまだ早いですし。
It's still a little early to check into the hotel. Tomoe glanced at her watch as she said that, while following Oishi out of the coffee shop. The sun was still high enough in the sky she didn't need to check the time.
本当は明日行く予定でしたが、このままひなみ沢に行って竜宮家を訪ねてみようと思います。
I was actually planning to go tomorrow, but I suppose I could head to Hinamazawa and visit the Ryugu household.
大石さんのお話も気になりますし。
I'm also worried about what you told me, Oishi-san. She wanted to see the girl herself, but she was still a minor, so making direct contact at this time would be premature. If she did, there was a chance she'd put Rina Ryugu on guard, which could impede future information gathering. Instead, she could listen to what her parents had to say and get to know the situation behind her family environment.
そうですか。
Oh, is that so?
なら車取ってきますので私もご一緒しますよ。
Then why don't we head there together? I can drive.
大丈夫ですよ。
Oh, I'll be alright.
私の車、この近くの駐車場に止めていますから。
My car is parked in a lot close to here.
いやいや、遠慮は無用ですよ、ともえちゃん。
Oh dear, modesty is unnecessary, Tomo-chan.
女性を助手席に乗せるなんて、後にも先にもめったにないことですからね。
And it's a rare occasion for me to have a lady in the passenger seat.
なんかいやらしいな。
Don't be obscene.
でも本当にお気遣いは。
But honestly, even though I appreciate your concern. However, when Tomoe tried to decline again, the smile vanished from Oishi's face, and he turned it to look straight at Tomoe-chan. There was no hint of levity in his expression. When Tomoe noticed that, she realized he was no longer joking around.
大石さん？
Oishi-san?
悪いことは言いません。乗ってきた車で行くのはおやめなさい。
I don't mean any harm by this, but please stop traveling in the car you drove here in.
ひなみ沢は排他的な村だと先ほどもお話ししましたが、その中をよそ者のあなたが予備知識もなく走り回るのは決してプラスにはならない。
I told you earlier, Hinamazawa is a very exclusive village, so it's never a good idea for outsiders to wander around unannounced.
そういえば分かってもらえますかね？
Do you understand what I'm saying?
危険なんですか？ひなみ沢は。
Are you saying it's dangerous in Hinamazawa?
いやいや、私がちょっと過敏になっているだけかもしれません。
Oh, no. Maybe I'm just being a little oversensitive.
今は綿流しとは全く関係のない時期ですし、観光とかで足を踏み入れた人もちゃんと無事に帰ってきています。
It's far enough away from Nagashi now, and there are legitimate tourists coming here for sightseeing.
ただそれでも他県ナンバーの車で回るのは村の連中に余計な警戒心を持たせる可能性がある。
But even so, there's a chance that the villagers will be extra cautious if they see a car with plates from another prefecture.
特にあなたは刑事ですからね。
Especially a detective, like yourself. Oishi had a valid point. Tomoe was certainly being a little careless. If she was simply going to visit Rina Ryugu, she could get by on her own, but there was still a chance some shadows lurking behind the scenes. In which case, it was probably best not to drive around in a car from another prefecture.
わかりました。
Understood?
それじゃあご好意に甘えさせていただきます。
Very well. I'll accept your hospitality. Then, Tomoe was able to see various places within Hinamazawa while Oishi was at the wheel. Irie Clinic, the only hospital in the area. The households of the Kimiyoshi and Sonozaki families of the three families. The forestry service building currently being used as the Hinamazawa branch school. And then...
ここに例の竜宮玲奈は通っているのですか？
Does Rina Ryugu go to school here?
ねえ、そうです。
Yes, that's right.
あいにく今日は祝日ですから誰もいませんがね。
Although today is a holiday, so there's nobody here. From inside the car, she turned her head to look at the school building on the other end of the yard. The heavy construction equipment and woodworking tools, usually tools casually placed beside it, made it look like a logging facility than a school building.
無理して通えないほどではないんですが、ここから沖宮の学校まで結構距離があります。
The school in Okinomiya is an extremely long distance from here. Not too far to walk if you had to, but still far.
だから村の連中が子供たちの通学中の安全を考えて ここに分校を作らせたんですよ。
So, people in the village converted this to a school for the sake of the children.
へえ。
Wow.
もっとも当時の理由はむしろ別のことにあった。
However, at the time there was a completely different reason.
ここに分校を作って子供たちを通わせることで、学校を奪われる彼らのことを悲劇的にマスコミに喧伝させ、
They
ダム
wanted,
建設計画の悪辣ぶりをアピールしたかったんだと思います。
they wanted to appeal to the mass media with a scandalous story about how the dam construction project was depriving the kids of their school. It was cunning, but effective. Even in Kakurichi, when residents built their homes on their planned airport construction site, the people appealed to the mass media, pleading for them not to destroy the source of the children's precious education. The crops they went through painstaking effort to grow would be devastated, and the children were crying. Tomoe had a bitter smile face as she remembered watching the adults act out the farce on TV.
まあとにかくすごかったんですよ。
Anyway, it was rather amazing.
なりふり構わずってのはああいうことを言うんでしょうな。
No matter how you look at it, that's one thing you can say.
暴力、押しかけ、根回し活動。自分たちの村が失われるか否かの瀬戸際ですから理解もできますが、合法非合法を問わず、あらゆる手を打って抗議活動をしていました。
Violence, stalking, underhanded deals. Their village was on the brink of being lost, so they had to put everything they had into fighting it, with no regard for the law.
そしてその団結に、お社様信仰が一役買っていたというわけです。
And their faith in Oyashiro-sama was a key element of that unification.
なるほど。
I see. However, when Tomoe listened to Oishi's explanation, something felt out of place. Just like in the coffee shop earlier, Oishi seemed to have a strong emotional stake in the dam construction project and the curse of Hinamizawa, almost an obsession. Even when discussing the various incidents so far, he tried to think and analyze them with a certain degree of objectivity, and wasn't one to get emotional when it came to investigation, but here...
ちなみに竜宮玲奈の学校での様子はどんな感じですか？
By the way, how is Reina Ryugu's school life?
それにつきましては、あまり学校側から情報を明らかにしてもらえないので、細かいことは何とも。
About that. We haven't received much information from the school, so the details are thin.
ただ、おそらく至って普通だと思います。
However, I think it's probably fairly ordinary.
実際に問題を起こした話もありませんし、聞き込みを行った限りでは、下級生たちの印象も悪くないようですからね。
Actually, I haven't heard any talk about her causing problems. In fact, her younger classmates seem to have a good impression of her.
では大石さんはどうして少し前彼女を調べようと考えたんですか？
Then why was it that you considered looking into her a little while back, Oishi-san?
例の行方不明になったという北条聡君ですが、
It was related to Satoshi Hojo-kun's disappearance.
いなくなる前に彼女と話をしていたそうでしてね。
I heard that he spoke with her before he went missing.
お社様についての。
About Oyashiro-sama.
お社様の？
About Oyashiro-sama? Oishi told Tomoe what he heard from another female student. According to her, Reina Ryugu apparently consulted with Satoshi Hojo a few days before this year's Watanagashi incident occurred.
普段から誰かに後ろからつけられている感じがすると。
About frequently feeling like there was somebody following behind him.
その子も最初聞いた時は何のことやらさっぱりわからなかったそうですがね。
And when he first asked, she acted like she already understood.
サトシ君が体験していることはすべてお社様のたたりの前触れなの。
Everything Satoshi-kun has been experiencing is an omen of Oyashiro-sama's curse.
誰かが遠くからじっと伺っている。
Someone is staring at you from a distance.
誰かがずっとつけてくる。
Someone is constantly following you.
誰かがいつも自分のすぐ後ろから見ている。
Someone is always watching you from behind.
やがて足音は常に自分とずれて一つ余計に聞こえるようになるの。
Eventually, you'll be able to hear an extra footstep that wasn't your own.
それらは初めのうちはお外でだけだけど、
At first, it'll only happen outside.
やがて後ろのそれは自分の家の中にまでついてくるようになる。
But soon enough, it'll be following behind you even in your own home.
そしてお布団に入って明かりを消してもずっと枕元から見下ろしてるの。
And, even after you turn off the lights and crawl into your futon, it'll be standing by your bedside looking down on you.
ただただ黙ってじーっと。
In total silence, patiently waiting
自らの罪を認めるまで。
until you admit your sins.
サトシ君は夢見が悪いって最初言い出したの。
At first, Satoshi-kun mentioned that he was having bad dreams.
それで私がどんな夢と聞いたら、私の時をなぞるようだった。
So, what kind of dreams were they? When I asked him about it, they reminded me of my own.
だから私、彼に予告したの。
That's why I had to warn him.
その気配がやがて近づき、足音を聞かせるようになり、常にサトシ君を見下ろしているようになったなら、
Those signs would get closer and closer, till you could hear the footsteps constantly looking down on Satoshi-kun.
それはきっと私の時と同じだから相談してって。
It sounded just like my experience, so I had to talk to him about it.
それがお社様だと。
And that's Oyashiro-sama?
ね
Right.
え。それからその北条聡君ですが、家庭の不和の件で相当悩んでいたようでして、それが殺意の理由と我々は考えていました。
After that, Satoshi Hojo-kun was especially worried about his family problems, which we thought was his motivation for committing the murder.
彼と妹は叔父夫婦と同居していたのですが、とにかく仲が悪くって。
He and his sister were living with their aunt and uncle, but they didn't get along.
特に彼の妹が懐かなかったようで、毎日のように衝突して大騒ぎになって。
The boy's sister wasn't taking it very well. There were daily conflicts. It was a big fuss.
その妹を叔父夫婦からかばっていたのですが、それが苦痛になるほど疲れ切っていたとのことです。
Protecting his sister from his aunt and uncle had to be painfully exhausting.
その件に対して警察は何も。
Did the police not do anything to help?
動けませんよ。よほど確固たる証拠でもない限りはね。
They couldn't do anything. Not without solid evidence.
それは公的機関の生活相談所でも同じことです。
The counselor's office said the same thing.
まして村の裏切り者扱いを受けた北条家の問題。ひなみ沢の連中も見て見ぬふりをし続けていました。
Not to mention, there's a problem how the village treated the Hojo family. The people of Inamazawa pretended they didn't see anything. 3 years ago, Satoshi Hojo's parents went against the village and refused to oppose the Hinamazawa Dam project. They even tried to convince other villagers to support it. As a result, they were branded as traitors who sold out their hometown. Even after Hojo and his wife died in the accident 2 years ago, nobody offered them any sympathy. Not only that, but the villagers continued to treat their children coldly. Two youngsters who couldn't find any relief for their unfair treatment, so they simply continued to endure it.
ひどい話です。
What an awful story.
その件については私たちの力が及ばずお恥ずかしい限りです。
It's shameful, but we didn't have the power to help them.
その後生き残った叔父はたたりを恐れた沖宮の愛人のところへ転がり込み、残された妹は友人と二人暮らしを始めました。
After that, the surviving uncle became terrified of the curse and moved in with his mistress in Okinomiya, and the sister started living together with her friend.
解決には程遠い話ですが、少なくとも地獄のような生活からは脱出したとは言えるのかもしれませんね。
The story is far from resolved, but I suppose you could say they did escape from a living hell. Tomoe looked out the window while enduring the painful conversation. She couldn't simply see it as someone else's problem.
いくら重荷でも兄弟がいなくなって嬉しいわけがない。
No matter how much of a burden it was, there's no way she can be happy with her brother gone. Tomoe thought back on her own past. When Madoka left and Tomoe was on her own, life certainly did get easier. Her living expenses were cut in half, so she didn't have to work impossibly hard at her part-time job. The time she spent visiting her at the hospital for rehabilitation could be freely used for her own purposes. But if anyone asked if she was happy, the answer would be no. Her grandmother often went out of town on business trips, so even if she returned home, nobody would be there. She'd turn on the lights, leave the TV on even though she wasn't watching it, and make a meal for one, then eat in silence. Her excessively serious personality proved disastrous as well. She couldn't call a friend to make small talk, and she couldn't play outside. She had an extremely boring college life of nothing but studying. Back then, she was constantly haunted by thoughts about her sister's current well-being. That loneliness prevented her from distracting herself with anything else.
その妹さんはどうなんだろう。私と同じ気持ちなんだろうか。
How is the boy's younger sister doing? Wonder if she feels the same way I did. Perhaps she wasn't feeling as lonely since she was living with a close friend. Still, whenever she woke up in the middle of the night, or whenever she came home alone, she immediately remembered. The pain of the absence of people whose presence you always took for granted.
それでですね。ともえちゃん
Anyway, Tomoe-chan?
ああ、すみません。お社様の話でしたね。
Huh? Sorry. We were talking about that story about Oishiro-sama, right?
それが竜宮玲奈とどういう関係が？
So, how does that tie back to Rina Ryugu?
竜宮玲奈はどうやら両親が離婚することになった家庭問題の原因をお社様のたたりと考えていたようです。
Apparently, Rina Ryugu seems to think that the curse of Oishiro-sama is responsible for her family problems and her parents' divorce.
実際事件を起こした直前にもその後にもその存在を認めていたような発言がありましたからね。
In fact, she made remarks seeming to confirm Oishiro-sama's existence both before and after the incident.
後ろをひたひたペタペタとついてくる何者かの気配があると。
Signs of someone following behind her, making footsteps.
それって一体何なんでしょうか？
What on earth could that be?
正直私にもわかりません。
To be honest, I don't know.
妄想にしてはできすぎているし、しかも事件を起こした2人が類似のものを感じているとあっては安易に迷信と片付けられるものではないのかもしれませんね。
It's too much to think it's just some delusion and two different people who caused incidents both had similar experiences, but it can't be so simple as tying it back to superstition. Tomoe Stoic glanced at Oishi, who was looking in the direction they were traveling. His expression implied he wasn't joking around, so she couldn't think of anything to say in response. When she first agreed to Oishi's request to help on an investigation, she didn't think it would be much of such a difficult story. A girl under some sort of stress exploded one day and violently lashed out. That was the impression she got. And, in order to evade her guilty conscience about the crime she committed, she subconsciously passed the responsibility onto something else she knew, and convinced herself it was the truth. It was a common phenomenon for adolescent boys and girls, so she thought that Rina Ryugu was going through something similar. But two people who seemed to have very little contact both described the same abnormal fear of this Oishiro-sama before turning to violent behavior. So there may be more to what they're saying than simply deflecting responsibility. After that, Oishi passed through the center of the village and headed into a mountainous area. Oh, it's the junk heap. And the weeds growing along the side of the road as they arrived made it seem like there were no signs of human
こ
activity.
こは？
Where are we? 先ほどお話ししたひなみ沢ダム戦争の跡地ですよ。
This is the site of the Hinamizawa Dam war I told you about earlier.
つわものどもがとシャレ込むには風情のない光景ですがね。
The tasteless scene where warriors clashed. Tomoe and Oishi stepped out of the car and stood in front of the site. It was a mound of garbage, filled with scrap and bulky trash. It was completely different from the scenic village, a sad place, almost like ruins. Apparently the villagers rarely visited here, so the soil was abundantly filled with weeds. The huge volume of garbage, was probably dumped here illegally by people from nearby towns and villages. After the people left things here, they remained here untouched and permanently exposed to the elements.
嫌な風景ですね。
What an eyesore.
誰も社会問題として取り上げないんですか？
Has nobody taken any action about this social problem?
まあ余ってる土地は山ほどありますし、お役所も手続きが面倒だからと腰が重いです。
Well, there's a lot of surplus land in the mountains, and the procedures for government offices to deal with it are far too troublesome.
声を上げれば、じゃあお前が何とかしろって話にもなりかねませんからね。やぶへびはごめんってやつですよ。
If you speak up about it, they'll just say, then why don't you do something about it? So it'll have the opposite effect.
もっとも、実際にはダム戦争当時の自演をやりすぎて、後処理に困って放置なんですから、馬鹿げた話なんですが。
But the truth is, after putting on the charade of the dam war, their subsequent embarrassment led them to neglect the post-processing procedures. It's an absurd story.
遅延ですか?
Charade, you say? Oishi nodded and said yeah in response to Tomoe's question, then lit a cigarette. According to his story, the illegal dumping at this trash heap was connected to the dam opposition movement. Since crooked businessmen were illegally dumping bulky trash and industrial waste at the site outside the village, they established a checkpoint to defend it. In fact, the problem of illegal dumping had apparently been going on for a long time, so they had a strong argument for it. However, it was never about industrial trash. Rather, the main objective was to stop construction-related vehicles for inspection and delay the progress of construction projects.
実際チクチクと書類を見せろとか積み荷の数を確かめるとか言って結構なタイムロスを稼いでいましたからね。
In fact, they lost a tremendous amount of time to reviews of official documents and verifying the quantity of cargo.
現場監督さんはいつも怒っていたものです。
The on-site manager was constantly upset about it.
親方日の丸のお偉方は反対運動の住民代表をなだめつつも一方では工事の遅れは一日でも取り返せと現場の責任者に言明していましたからね。
Although the big shot government officials tried to appeal to the residents in the opposition movement, they also placed a person in charge of the site with the responsibility of recovering construction delays, even if just by a single day.
酒が入るたび浴槽をこぼしていましたよ。
When you drink, you let your emotions show.
大石さんはその現場監督さんと親しかったのですか?
Oishi-san, did you know this on-site manager?
うん。古くからの友人でした。
Yeah, he was a very old friend.
年上の兄貴のような親父のような厳しいけれど人情味のあるいい人でしてね。
Like an older brother or father. He was strict, but he was a good man with a warm heart.
いろいろと教わったものですよ。
I learned a lot from him.
そう。例えるなら、ともいちゃんと山沖さん。あるいはちょっと僭越ですが、私とともいちゃんのような関係って言えばいいのかな。
That's right. It's like your relationship with Yamaoki-san, Tomoe-chan. Or if it's not too presumptuous of me to say, like your relationship with me. Ah. Just then, Tomoe suddenly remembered. Oishi told her about the curse of Oishiro-sama murder from 3 years ago when they were at the coffee shop earlier. That's right. The victim in that case was the on-site manager of the dam construction project, wasn't it?
大石さん、まさかその人って。
Oishi-san. No, wait. That man was...
ええ、そうです。
Yeah, that's right.
3年前の綿流しの夜、このゴミ山のどこかで殺されました。
He was killed somewhere in this mound of garbage on the night of Watanagashi 3 years ago.
死体はバラバラにされて、腕が一本まだ発見されていません。
The corpse was dismembered, and one arm still hasn't been recovered.
そんな。
It can't be. Tomoe looked toward Oishi, utterly at a loss for words. He smoked a cigarette while staring at the mound of garbage, gazing at the former dam construction site.
毎年毎年、今年こそは犯人を捕まえてやる。
Year after year, I say that this is the year I'll catch the culprit.
そして、もうこれ以上たたりの犠牲者は出さない。
And that the curse won't claim any more victims.
そう墓前に誓ってやってきましたがね。
I swore that in front of his grave.
結局、今年も出しちまった。
But in the end, it happened again this year.
そして、働きの毒な男の子の未来まで奪っちまった。
And it robbed the future of a poor boy.
そう思うたびに、胸がね、
Every
痛く
time,
なるんですよ。
every time I think about it, my chest aches.
大石さん、
Oishi-san.
ともいちゃんは偉いな。
I admire you, Tomoe-chan.
こんな気持ちを11年間ずっと持ち続けていたなんて。
Even after 11 years, you haven't lost your convictions.
私はまだ3年なのに、犯人への怒りと憎しみで、時々 自分がどうにかなりそうになる。
Even though it's only been 3 years in my case, sometimes my rage and hatred for the culprit drive me to the edge.
あなたはその3倍から4倍だ。
For you, it's been 3 or 4 times that.
私だったらきっと耐えられない。
There's no way I could bear it if I were in your position.
自分がその立場に立ってみて改めて尊敬しますよ。
Standing in your position has given me even more respect for you.
私だって。
Me too. What a sound effect. Tomoe closed her eyes and bit her lip. If she had to challenge her parents' enemy completely on her own, how would she have managed? Surely by now, she would have given in to despair navigating the labyrinth of the unknown or continued pursuing it until it broke her. Tomoe was able to keep working hard until today thanks to Oishi and Yamaoki, and because she had Madoka. But Oishi was shouldering that burden on his own. There was no easy way to say which experience was more painfully difficult. Anger, hatred, and revenge. Constantly thinking those thoughts and enduring the pain and suffering over and over again. I surely said it was everything to me. I've said many times that it's not possible to move on until I overcome this. But sometimes I get anxious. I wonder if the world lying beyond this is really the world I want to see. So, I understand. The pain bearing down on Oishi's shoulders and the weight of his sorrow.
大石さん、
Oishi-san?
はい。
Yes?
こんなことを大石さんに言える立場じゃないって分かっているんですが、
I understand that it's not really my position to say this, but even so,
もし私で何かお役に立てることがあったら何でも言ってください。
if there's anything I can do to help you, please tell me.
どんなことがあってもできる限りのお力添えはさせていただきます。
No matter what happens, I'll do everything in my power to help.
ともえちゃん。
Tomoe-chan. Oishi stomped out a cigarette, then turned to Tomoe with a tranquil expression. His eyes had a brilliant, clear shine to them that exemplified his strong will. Oishi gazed off somewhere, searching through his memories, then quickly arrived at one. That was the detective from the Metropolitan Police Department, who turned to him over 10 years ago with strong eyes as sharp as a knife. Let's go, Oishi-san. Even now, he couldn't forget the fearless smile on his face as he said that. At the time, he certainly felt a sense of justice that he'd nearly forgotten. Then, the sight of him rushing through a storm of bullets without hesitation, gun in hand, in order to protect a comrade. Seeing the look in his eyes at the time moved him to tears for the first time in ages. She sure has grown stronger. Oishi remembered the first time he met Tomoe. Honestly, at that time, he was worried that she was a delicate girl who couldn't endure the tragedy of losing her family. But look at her now. Her petite, unassuming body was stretched, tall and full of vitality. She even had the compassion to be concerned about him. After 11 years, the image of a frail fledgling was completely gone. Living such a long life, when Oishi looked at her, he could feel the warmth from the bottom of his heart.
ねえ、助かります。
Yes, thank you for the help.
ともえちゃんにそう言ってもらえると、まだまだ頑張ろうって気になりますよ。
Just hearing you say that makes me want to push myself even harder.
うん。
No!
また大げさだな。
You're exaggerating again.
もっとも柿内で大石さんたちにどんなお手伝いができるかまだよくわかりませんが。
Although, I don't really know how much help I can be from Kakuichi, but...
あれ？
Huh?
え、どうしました？
What's wrong?
あれ、女の子ですよね。
Is that a girl? Oishi looked in the direction Tomoe was pointing. The view was partially hidden behind the shadow of the oversized trash, but it was just as Tomoe said. Someone with a girlish figure was looking down into the slope of the garbage mountain, and her hair swayed as she tried to pull something out. I only know one girl who would be digging through this trash.
こんなところで一体何をしているんでしょう。
What on earth is she doing in a place like this?
あれはおそらく例の竜宮レイナじゃないでしょうか。
That's probably the girl from this case, Rina Ryugu.
あれが？
Huh? That's her? After hearing Oishi's answer, Tomoe looked back at the girl once again. She could tell it was a girl from her skirt-like clothing, but she was too far away to get a good look at her appearance.
こんなに遠いのによくわかりましたね。
You can tell this far away?
顔は
From
見
this
える
far
んで
away?
すか？
Could you see her face?
いえ、 でも間違いないでしょう。
No, but there's no doubt about it.
こんなところに来る女の子なんて他にはいませんからね。
No other girl would come to a place like this.
住民や子供たちから聞いた話だと、休みの日や放課後に時々ここでああやってゴミを掘り起こしたりしているそうです。
I've heard from the residents and other children, she sometimes comes here to dig up trash on her days off and after school.
ゴミを何のために？
Trash? For what? What
さ
for?
あ、本人は宝探しをしているらしくて、気に入ったものを見つけたときは自宅に持ち帰っているとのことです。
Well, seems that she's hunting for treasure. When she finds something she likes, she takes it home with her.
趣味とも言えなくもないんですが、一部では気候とも言われていますね。
You might say it's a hobby, but in part, you could call it eccentric behavior.
気候ですか。
Eccentric behavior? It certainly was peculiar. It was unusual for girls of her age to pick up trash, much less take it home. Of course, there could still be usable tools and appliances in there, and it wasn't impossible to find cute things like stuffed animals. However, common thought among adolescents is an aversion to things they consider unclean. They wouldn't want to touch something dirty, but that wasn't all. It's only a slight exaggeration to say they would declare something unclean and refuse to accept it as their own property because someone else had touched it or used it once. Nevertheless, Reina Ryugu enjoyed collecting garbage as a hobby, just as the villager said. What was the meaning behind that act? Does she have some unique sense of value? Or something else? No. Tomoe had a memory of something she read in a book long ago. When people feel a sense of alienation or loneliness, they have a tendency to fill their living space with other people, animals, or things in general. One theory suggests that behavior originating from the flocking instinct of animals. They say humans are stressed by empty spaces and environments. They're always connected with something, so they can't feel mentally stable unless they feel something close to them. So, even those living isolated from society will become agitated after just a few days if left alone in an empty space with nothing but food. Decorating a room with flowers and pictures, or keeping an animal as a pet are typical examples of this phenomenon. And when that pressing mental condition is consistently nurtured, they say it can manifest as excessive greed. A wealthy person extravagantly spends their money like flowing water. The seemingly wasteful act is actually necessary to maintain their mental stability. Additionally, even those without wealth will spend on debt after debt if suddenly given a lump sum, sometimes even leading it down the road to ruin. However, not wanting to waste things in their living environment, or when surrounded by people they don't like the character of, they can choose to recklessly adopt animals, decorate with excessive quantities of flowers, or in some extreme cases, bring home things abandoned by other people. What if Rina Rigu's habit of taking trash home with her was a sign of mental instability? And what if there was some external factor that could have driven her into those circumstances?
大石さん、
Oishi-san.
確か竜宮玲奈の両親は離婚しているって話でしたよね。
I'm sure you've heard that Rina Rigu's parents are divorced, right?
ええ、そうです。
Yes, that's right.
その直後あたりに、ともいちゃんが調べてくれた学校内の傷害事件を引き起こしました。
And right after that, she caused a violent incident at school that you investigated, Tomo-chan.
そして精神科医のカウンセリングを受け、心身に深刻なストレスを抱えているという診断を受けて、心の安定を図るためにこのひなみ沢へ移り住むことになった。
Then, after receiving psychiatric counseling and being diagnosed with severe stress, both mental and physical, it was decided that moving to Inamazawa would help her stabilize.
前の入院先の看護師がそう教えてくれました。
That's what the nurse at her previous hospital told me.
それなら彼女、この村に来てからはその類の治療をどこで受けているんでしょう。
So, did she receive some kind of medical treatment after coming to this village?
治療ですか？
Medical treatment?
ええ、
Yeah.
少なくともそれが問題で転校したのだとしたら、簡単に通院をやめることはできないはずです。
At least, even if she transferred schools, she shouldn't be able to cease hospitalization so easily. It was an offhanded question, but once Tomoe put it into words, she started feeling even more suspicious. Even if the prosecution dropped the case against the girl who caused the incident, she would still be obligated to stay in long-term counseling for her mental instability. Additionally, when relocation makes it impossible to continue using the same medical institution, It is common practice for a similar institution in the new area to inherit the medical records and treatment methods of the original institution.
竜宮玲奈はひなみ沢への移転後、大石さんが聞き込みを行った茨城の病院には通っていないというお話でしたよね。
Oishi-san, after Reina Ryugu transferred to Hinamizawa, didn't you go to the hospital in Ibaraki to ask about that?
ええ、その通りです。
Yes, of course.
ですからもし治療を受けるのだとしたら、設備や個人情報の保護を考えると、ゴグラにある大きな大学病院ぐらいしかないと思いますが。
So, she did receive treatment. There's only one major hospital in Gogura with the equipment and personnel to help her.
だとしたら、彼女が今どんな状態にあるのか調べることはできないでしょうか。
If that's the case, couldn't we investigate to see what sort of condition she's in now?
ともえちゃん、それはどういう意味です？
Tomoe-chan, what do you mean by that?
竜宮玲奈は病気が完治していない。
Reina Ryugu still hasn't recovered from her illness.
いえ、ある意味で悪化している。
Or rather, in a sense, it's getting worse.
それがあの異常行動や大石さんの言っていたお社様の語りに関与している可能性があるのではと。
And there's a chance her abnormal behavior might be related to this Oishiro-sama you mentioned earlier, Oishi-san. To my gaze, that Reina Ryugu, she tried to dig something out of the mountain of trash, then turned back toward Oishi.
北条聡がお社様のたたり、つまり今年の殺人事件に関与していた可能性が高いと、先ほど大石さんのお話にもありました。
Satoshi Hojo was involved with Oishiro-sama's curse, so in other words, there's a high likelihood that it's also connected to this year's murder case, like you mentioned in our earlier conversations.
そして彼女と同じ症状を持つ病気を北条聡も患っていた可能性も考えられる。
And it's possible that Satoshi Hojo was also suffering from a disease with the same symptoms as her.
なぜなら事件前には2人ともお社様に対しての畏怖といった共通認識を持っている。
Because they both had the same fear of Oishiro-sama before their respective incidents.
ということは彼女の精神状態と関与の人間を把握することで北条聡が殺害行為に踏み切る経緯を理解する手がかりになるという考え方はどうでしょう。
And so, by grasping her mental state and understanding the people involved, maybe we can find some clues to help us understand the thought process that drove Satoshi Hojo to commit murder.
ではともえちゃんは竜宮玲奈も今回の殺人事件に関与していると？
So, Tomoe-chan, do you think Reina Ryugu might be involved in this murder case?
ちなみに被害者の北条玉江は綿流しの祭りの最中に殺されましたが、竜宮玲奈はその事件当時祭りの会場で複数の人間に目撃されています。
Incidentally, the victim Tomoe Hojo was killed during the Wadagashi festival, but several people witnessed Reina Ryugu at the festival grounds at the time of the incident.
アリバイは完璧ですよ。
It's a rock-solid alibi.
いえ、その事件とはおそらく竜宮玲奈は無関係でしょう。
No, Reina Ryugu probably has nothing to do with the case.
ただ
Or that case.
彼女が茨城で起こした事件も同様に大石さんの言う通り誰かの意思で凶行が引き起こされているのだとしたら、
However, if her incident in Ibaraki was caused by someone else's intention, just as you said,
2人の背後には共通する何かがあってもおかしくはない。
it's not strange to think there's a common element behind both of them.
それが何かが分かればひなみ沢連続開始事件の黒幕の姿が見えてくるのではないでしょうか。
If we can figure out what it is, maybe we can see who's pulling the strings behind the series of mysterious deaths in Hinamizawa.
説得力はないこともないですが、随分大胆というか強引な推理ですね。
You're certainly not without persuasive power, but that's some bold reasoning. Oishi's thoughts stirred around Tomoe's suggestion about mental illness and using faith in Oishiro-sama to control the village. It seemed like a completely unrelated story, but if Satoshi Hojo suffered from some mental illness that led to the crime, then there was a chance that the mastermind behind the incident was utilizing that mental illness.
無茶な論法であることは分かっています。
I know it's an unreasonable argument.
ただ2人とも事件を起こす際にお社様が共通のキーワードになっていることがどうしても気になるんです。
But the two of them both used the keyword Oishiro-sama before their incidents. I can't help but focus on that.
その背後を洗ってみることで今まで見えなかった何かが見えてくるような、そんな気がします。
If we keep scrubbing at it, we'll be able to see something we couldn't see before. That's how I feel.
なるほど。
I see.
現状では竜宮レイナについての情報が少なすぎるので簡単には判断しかねます。
At the moment, we don't have enough information about Rina Ryugu to assess her properly.
ただ正直今は八方塞がりの状況です。
But the truth is, we're blocked on all sides.
ともいちゃんのその見方にもちょっと乗ってみましょうかね。
So let's try taking your approach, Tomoe-chan. After saying that, Oishi tossed the cigarette to the ground and stomped it out. Then, he glanced at his watch.
それじゃそろそろ引き上げましょうか。
Anyway, I think it's about time we head out.
余計なところに連れ出してすみませんでしたね。
Sorry for dragging you to somewhere unnecessary.
いえ、参考になりました。
No, this is helpful.
この後は当初の予定通り竜宮レイナの父親に会ってみようかと思いますが、よろしいでしょうか。
I was originally planning to visit Rina Ryugu's father after this. Would that be alright?
もちろんご案内させていただきますよ。
Yes, of course. I'll lead the way. No. Then, Oishi walked toward the parked car while twirling the key around his fingertip. Tomoe tried to follow behind him, but she stumbled a bit on a stone and lost her footing.
おっと。
Whoops. Huh? That moment, Tomoe suddenly looked back toward the mound of garbage and gasped. Off in the edge of her line of sight, there was a girl far enough away to look the size of her little finger, standing there quietly, staring at Tomoe without moving a muscle. Spooky. She couldn't quite make out the girl's expression. However, she could clearly feel the cold hostility dwelling in her eyes.
お前は誰だ？
Who are you? She shook her head to dismiss the voice in her imagination. There was no way she could hear a voice from this distance. It was difficult enough just to discern her appearance. Tomoe turned and began walking toward the car while those thoughts nagged at her. Nevertheless, she felt it. It felt like a sharp gaze was burning through her back, and it gave her a chill. Heading back from the garbage mountain, a white building came into view as they approached the center of the village. Oishi went on to explain that it was only the little hospital in the village, the Irie Clinic.
おや、あれは？
Oh, what's that? A black car was parked by the front door of the Irie Clinic, and a young man in a white coat was talking to another man dressed in a suit. Then, when the man noticed Oishi driving the car, he rushed over to the driver's seat.
ああ、大石さん、ちょうどいいところに。
Oh, Oishi-san, you're in just the right place.
ナイスタイミングっす。
Nice timing.
クマちゃん、どうしてここに？
Kuma-chan, what are you doing here?
いや、大石さんがひなみ沢に行くっていうから、てっきり入江診療所に向かったのかなって。
Well, you said you were going to Hinamazawa, Oishi-san, so I guess that you were going to the Irie Clinic.
警察無線も繋がらなかったから、直接迎えに来たんですよ。
Couldn't reach you on the police radio, so came here directly to meet you.
無線が？おかしいな。
The radio? That's weird. As soon as he heard that, Oishi fiddled with the radio beside the steering wheel. Indeed, the light was out and there was no indication it was receiving transmissions.
あら、本当だ。これは面倒かけちゃいましたね。
Oh, it really isn't working. What a bother.
で、何のご用で？
So, did you need something?
あれ、忘れてましたか？
Huh? Did you forget?
今日って例の懇親会の日じゃないですか。
Today's the day of the get-together meeting, isn't it?
なのに発起人はどこに行ったって所長が大騒ぎしてるんで、大急ぎで呼びに来たんですよ。
But the chief was making a fuss since the meeting organizer wasn't in, so I came here in a hurry.
発起人って誰ですか？
Meeting organizer? Who's that?
大石さんですよ。
It's you, Oishi-san. As soon as he said that, Oishi stopped to think for a while before shouting, "Oh!" and smacking his forehead.
そうでした、そうでした。ああ、今日月曜だったんですよね。
Right. Today's Monday, isn't it?
てっきり祝日気分で日曜日のつもりでいちゃってましたよ。
Thanks to the holiday, it still felt like Sunday.
まったくもう。
Good grief.
で、この方は？
So, who is this?
お初にお目にかかります。
This is our first time meeting.
柿内署の警部で南井と申します。
my name is Manai, and I'm the chief inspector from Kakuichi Station. As Tomoe stepped out of the car, she bowed her head to the man Oishi called Kuma-chan. Oishi went on to introduce the man as a subordinate of his, Detective Kumagai.
でどうします大石さん
So, what are you going to do, Oishi-san?
今からならまだ間に合いますが
If we leave now, we can still make it in time.
ですが、ともいちゃんとの約束もありますからね。
That's true. But I also made a promise to Tomoe-chan.
あ、でしたら大石さんは行っちゃってください。
Oh, if that's the case, then please go, Oishi-san.
私一人で行ってきますので。
I'll go on alone.
いやいや、そういうわけにはいきませんよ。
Oh dear, can't do that.
竜宮家の場所をご存知なんですか？
Do you know how to get to the Ryugu residence?
あ、いえ。
No.
でもさっき車で来た感じだとこの村って割と見通しのいい区画のようですから。
But based on the drive up here, this seems like a fairly wide area.
メモ書き程度の地図があれば大丈夫だと思います。
I think I'll be alright with a map and some notes.
まあ、確かに迷うほどの場所ではありませんが。
Well, this is definitely not the place to get lost. Oishi crossed his arms and groaned, still trying to decide.
心配してくれるのは嬉しいけど。
I appreciate his concern, but still. Tomoe bitterly smiled. Apparently, Oishi still had a strong image of her from the old days and was treating her like a child. She certainly took heed to Oishi's words in the beginning and paid careful attention to her surroundings, but none of the villagers out and about seemed at all concerned. Well, we'll probably be fine. His defensive posture seemed a little excessive.
もう大石さんも心配性ですね。
Man, you're such a worrywart, Oishi-san.
こう見えても私立派な大人なんですよ。
Maybe I don't look like it, but I'm an adult, you know?
それにここに来るまで特に問題もなかったじゃないですか。
And we haven't run into any problems since coming here, have we?
まあ、そうですね。
It's like a famous last words type situation, especially if she goes to meets up with Rina Ryugu. Well, I suppose that's true.
それじゃ、申し訳ありませんが、私はここで失礼させていただきます。
In that case, I must apologize for leaving you behind.
あ、その車でも大丈夫ですか？
Oh, will you be alright with the car?
ええ、無線が使えないのはちょっときついですけど。
Yeah, although it might be a bit of a problem that I can't use the radio.
すみません。お手数ですが、地図をいただけますでしょうか。
And sorry to be a bother, but do you have a map I could use?
わかりました。ちょっと待ってくださいね。
Got it, just a moment. And then Oishi tore a page out of his police notebook and quickly drew a map, then handed it to Tomoe. The text was a bit hard to read, but it was easy to understand because he marked every street corner.
ともえちゃん、
Tomoe-chan.
はい。
Yes?
一応用心のために言っておきます。
For now, let me just say this in the interest of caution.
竜宮家の訪問が終わったら、まっすぐ沖宮へ戻ってきてください。
Please come straight back to Okinomiya as soon as you're done visiting the Ryugu household.
それだけは約束してもらえませんか？
Can you promise me that?
だからオーバーですってば、大石さん。
Oishi-san, you're overreacting. Oishi wasn't smiling. He stared at Tomoe with a solemn expression as he handed her the key. It felt like he was a little too worried about the situation, but she appreciated his concern, so she nodded.
わかりました。
Understood.
父親に会って話が聞けましたら、まっすぐ帰るようにします。
I'll head straight back after I meet the father and hear his story.
私も挨拶を済ませたらさっさと沖宮署に戻って待っていますので。
I'll head back to Okinomiya Station as soon as I can wait for you.
もし何かありましたら遠慮なく連絡してください。
If you need anything, please don't hesitate to contact me.
はい。
Got it.
それじゃあこの車お借りしますね。
Thanks for letting me borrow this car. After saying that, Tomoe took the key from Oishi, climbed into the car, and started the engine. Oishi watched... Oishi watched... is what it's on. Watched through the rearview mirror until Tomoe's car disappeared around the corner. Tomoe drove toward the Ryugu household, following the notes Oishi provided her. She found the house with less trouble than expected.
ここか。
Is this it? She stepped out of the car, closed the door, and suddenly looked over her surroundings. There were no particular signs of other people around. Then she stood in front of the entrance, took a deep breath, and lightly knocked on the door.
ごめんください。
Excuse me?
竜宮さんはいらっしゃいますか？
Is Ryugu-san here? However, there was no response from inside. She knocked once more, this time a little louder, but she still couldn't hear anything from inside.
ごめんください。
May I come in? Still no reply. This seems dangerous. Not home, huh? Suddenly feeling something out of place near her feet, she dropped her eyes and noticed something like blue paper near the tips of her shoes. When she picked it up, it was a small box of matches.
ブルーマーメイドか。
Blue Mermaid, huh? Tomoe was able to pull the name out of some short-term memory after seeing the flashy logo. There certainly was a flashy cabaret club named Blue Mermaid in one particular corner of the downtown area. Naturally, that store was no place for a minor, so it was probably dropped by Reina Ryugu's father.
確か父親は無職だって聞いたけど。
That's right, I heard the father was unemployed. Got like something in my throat, it feels like. If so, he was in a good position. Tomoe had a prejudice against people who would spend time at bars downtown without having a regular job. According to earlier investigation, he apparently received considerable compensation from his wife at the time of their divorce. But is there any chance that that's the cause of his daughter's problems?
あれ？
Huh? Tomoe's eyes turned to a strange object in the yard when she softly stepped on it. It was some sort of mascot doll from a store, weathered by the elements. And looking more closely, there were various dolls, stuffed animals, and things resembling machine parts sat down beside it. It looked like they were carelessly sat down rather than deliberately positioned.
じゃあ一体あの子はゴミ山で何を？
What on earth is she doing with that mountain of garbage? She did speculate earlier that an unstable mental state could be leading her to this act of garbage collection. There's a missing word there. And her remarks about Oishiro-sama. After all, Reina Ryugu's mental state could be the reason for her unusual actions, and that theory was getting stronger and stronger. That moment, Tomoe suddenly felt something behind her and turned back. She couldn't see anything there. However...
何？
Ooh,
何なの？
what the... She could hear a sound intermittently, and when she realized it was the sound of footsteps, a chill ran through her whole body.
サトシ君が体験していることはすべてお社様のたたりの前触れなの。
Everything Sachi-kun has been experiencing is an omen of Oishiro-sama's curse.
誰かが遠くからじっと伺っている。
Someone is staring at you from a distance.
誰かがずっとつけてくる。
Someone is constantly following you.
誰かがいつも自分のすぐ後ろから見ている。
Someone is always watching you from behind.
やがて足音は常に自分とずれて一つ余計に聞こえるようになるの。
Eventually, you'll be able to hear an extra footstep that wasn't your own. Remembering Oishi's earlier story about Reina Ryugu, Tomoe suddenly turned pale and swallowed her spit. What am I afraid of? Even after hearing that story, isn't it unreasonable to get this nervous? In which case, how do you explain that sound just now? She tried many times to shake it off just her imagination, but every single time, pat, 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 tip, 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 tip. The footsteps immediately negated that denial, as if to mock her. Pat, 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 tip, 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 tip. Even after surveying the surrounding area, nobody was there. There was nothing suspicious at all. What is the meaning of this? Could this be what Reina Ryugu was referring to? Oishiro-sama's curse? Did she anger the gods by snooping around in a village where she didn't belong?
まさかそんなこと。
There's no such thing. Tomoe forced a laugh while struggling to deny the story she heard earlier. Impossible. That's right, it's impossible. Someone, or some ghost-like entity, was definitely following her. Even so, Tomoe couldn't cast aside the creepy sensations plaguing her heart, so she left the Ryugu household in a hurry. Then, she opened the door to Oishi's car, jumped inside, and turned the key. Huh? However, the engine wouldn't start, simply continued making idle sounds. Finding that suspicious, Tomoe opened the door, and at that point, she suddenly noticed the pungent smell of gasoline. What is this? Tomoe stepped out of the car and stood beside it, searching for the source of the odor. It was the gas cap in the back of the car. It was smashed open, and there was a fuel hose for a kerosene stove or something laying on the ground below, covered in gasoline. No way. That couldn't be the work of a ghost. But did that mean there was a person with malicious intentions nearby? She fought hard to suppress the urge to panic. Someone must have drained the fuel tank using this hose and spilled it on the ground. Technically, doing so wasn't impossible. Still, she was only away from the car for a few minutes. Not only that, but even though Tomoe went into the Ryugu family's yard, she wasn't all that far away. Could some suspicious individual have skillfully carried that act out while remaining completely unnoticed? Tomoe looked left and right, then behind her, searching for signs of another person. Nothing. Nobody was there. Possible. That couldn't be. Someone was able to break the gas cap, drain the gas from the car, and then disappear in such a brief time frame? That couldn't be the work of humans. Then, was it the work of the gods or something supernatural? It can't be. Tomoe violently shook her head, then locked the car and started walking back the way she came. If her memory is correct, there should be a phone booth just a short distance away. If she could make it there and contact Oishi or someone. Every time she took a step, she could hear the peculiar sound of a footstep just a moment later. It had to be an auditory hallucination. She must just be tired. After hearing so many strange and unsettling stories, her emotions were getting carried away. Tomoe told herself that over and over along the way. But even so, up until now, she wasn't afraid of ghosts. She didn't even believe they existed. But for the first time in her life, she felt a fear that froze her entire body. She arrived at a fork in the road with a telephone booth right as it got completely dark out. Thank goodness. I made it in time. Tomoe wiped the sweat from her forehead with her sleeve as she rushed into the telephone booth. The road had very few street lights, so if she had arrived just a little later, she might have stumbled on her own feet in the dark. She did bring a flashlight and kept it in the car just in case, but unfortunately, she forgot to take it with her. I'm getting flustered. Tomoe muttered her bitter thoughts as she picked up the receiver. However, it was also true that she didn't want to stay in that place for even a moment longer. Was it less a sense of dread and more of a general agitation, feeling of danger? Or... Tomoe inserted 3 10-yen coins, then opened her police notebook and dialed the number for Okinomiya Station. After a few rings, she heard the voice of an older man saying, "Hello?" Excuse me. This is Manai from Kakuichi Station. Detective Oishi and I...
Oh, Tomoe-chan desu ka?
Oh, is this Tomoe-chan?
Watashi desu, Oishi desu yo.
It's me, Oishi. No. Oishi-san, why?
いえいえ、あんまり戻りが遅いものですから、心配になって情報センターで連絡をお待ちしていたんですよ。
Sorry, you were taking a long time to get back, so I was feeling worried and decided to wait at the information desk for you to make contact.
いやー、連絡がついて安心しましたよ。
Ooh, I'm relieved you finally called.
今どちらですか?
Where are you now? Right. I'm at the phone booth in Hinamizawa Village. Tomoe briefly explained the story of the gas being drained from the car. When Oishi heard that, he responded understood in a low voice that indicated he fully grasped the situation.
すぐに迎えをそちらにやらせます。
I'll head out to meet you right away.
私も行きますので、10分ほど待っていてもらえますか。
Can you wait for about 10 minutes?
すみません、助かります。
I'd be shitting bricks if I was Tomoe. At this point, I'd be like, God, Oishi instilled the fear inside of me. Someone just quickly drained the gas out of my car. Clearly, I'm in trouble. I'd just start running home or something. just start running. I'm sorry. Thanks for the help.
では、ここでお待ちしていますので。
Then I'll be waiting here.
あまり歩き回ると危険ですから、そこでじっとしていてください。
It's a bit dangerous to walk around, so please do stay there. Don't move. Don't become a moving target. Stay completely still. Wait to get killed.
それじゃ。
That's what he's saying to her. See you soon. Oishi hung up the phone after saying that. She let out a heavy sigh of relief as she set the phone on the hook. She already knew that. She wasn't some child afraid of non-existent things in the dark. But the situation had gotten heavy enough that Tomoe wasn't able to walk anymore.
きっと大石さんたちにはしばらくネタにされちゃうだろうな。
I'm sure Oishi and the others are going to tease me about this for a while. Although, Tomoe didn't have the greatest eyesight in the dark, so walking at night was a bad choice anyway. It was best to avoid getting hurt by tripping and falling into a ditch.
それにしても
Anyway, Tomoe couldn't help but grumble to herself. Regrettably, her long time living in the city had made her forget how dark and gloomy a country road at night could be. It wasn't so bad in Ibaraki, although she did have to carry a flashlight at night.
軟弱になったな。私も。
I've gotten soft. Once again, she let out a sigh. The telephone pole she could see through the glass was dimly lit and making an irritating sound. There were countless shadows darting around for moths or some other type of insect. As soon as they approached the round light bulb, they were either blown away by the heat or burned and gently fell to the ground.
飛んで火にいる夏の虫。
Rushing to their own demise. She couldn't help but shake her head. As she thought that, Tomoe pushed the door open, trying to get out of the enclosed space and get some fresh air. Oh! Why, hello! Just hanging by the phone booth. It's so nice to meet you. Terrifying. Just... That moment, Tomoe couldn't help but lightly raise her voice and immediately jump back to steel herself. Ahead of her was a girl, expressionlessly staring at her with icy cold eyes.
あなたは
Who are you? She hadn't gotten a good look at her face. She'd only been able to make out her hairstyle and clothes from far away. However, Tomoe clearly realized that the girl in front of her was Reina Ryugu.
何か私に用が。
Do you need something from me?
私に何の用？
Do you need something from me? Tomoe's words were cut off by Reina Ryugu, striking back at her with the same exact question, and still no expression on her face. The coldness in her tone was as sharp as a knife. The two eyes staring straight at her had a sinister glow amongst the darkness.
ね
Hey,
え、私に
do you
何の
need something
用？
from me? A stiff chill coursed through Tomoe's back. Without her even realizing it, the girl had already trapped her within that narrow box. Rina slowly stepped into the box to squeeze her even tighter. Back up! And then she noticed Tomoe's police notebook and stared at Tomoe with all her strength.
刑事か。
A detective, huh?
刑事かお前。
You're a detective, aren't you?
そうよ。
That's right.
だったら
知ってるの？
Then you already know, right?
私のこと。お前は知ってるな。
You already know who I am, right? Tomoe felt her neck being tightened as Rina stood right in front of her, staring her down. It happened so suddenly, Tomoe was unable to react. Die. Jesus! Ryugu-san.
死ねおバカさん
Die, you idiot. Oh, is she help? The scene before her eyes gradually grew darker. Her forehead was in pain, and it felt cold and heavy inside her head. She repeatedly opened and closed her mouth, gasping, but not a sound came out. Even breathing was impossible. As hard as she tried to tear the hands away from her neck, they remained tight. In fact, the grip grew even stronger, and the nails even started biting into her throat. She could hear something, a sound from far away. No, this is someone's voice. What are you? And then, Tomoe lost consciousness. Cold-blooded, man. Damn. You go, Reina Riku. You knock that person out. Holy. Crazy. Crazy. Alright, we'll call it there. That's a nice hour of reading. Intense, though, there at the end. Jesus. Oh, Tomoe's back. Spoiler alert, she's not dead. Spoiler alert, Tomoe not dead. Alright, I'm gonna throw up a BRB. I'm gonna get Death Stranding set up. I'm gonna do a couple other things, and then I'll be back quite shortly. I'll be back, give me about maybe 5 minutes at most. I'll be back, get that set up.